هاي زاك، كيفك؟
اهلا وسهلا ساره. تمام، كله تمام، وانتي؟
منيحة منيحة. ناسي آخر مرة كمان شفنا بعض فيس تو فيس، يمكن بلبنان كانت ولا امتى؟
يا كانت في لبنان 2018 I think.
18 ايه.
yeah.
زاك، ثانك يو فور بينج معي اليوم. بعرف مع فرق التوقيت أخذتنا شوي وقت لنلاقي كمان توقيت يزبط مع اثنين، بس ثانك
mm-hmm.
يو لتكون معي
My
اليوم.
pleasure, my pleasure. Yeah.
زاك، أنا عم بتطلع على كل الاكسبيرينس تبعك. ات واز يعني عن جد ريتش وغنية. بلشت بالأول أكتر، يعني عملت I think internship بجوجل كويب ديفلوبمنت. بعدين أسست أنت كذا شركة، فتت عملتها as head of partnership، وهلأ رجعت على زي جود لاب اللي أنت already كنت فيها قبل ال
mm-hmm.
2016. سو هيدي نقلات نوعية إذا بدك، يعني بنروح جوجل بعدين أعمل فاوندر لشركة أرجع فوت ميتا. So can you walk us through this journey؟ يعني كيف أنت قررت إنه كل قرار أخذته من محل للتاني؟ شو كان السبب من وراه كمان لقررت تاخد هيدا الدرب المعين؟
hmm. سؤال that's gonna help, push me in العمق like how I think about these things. um, and so قبل الجوجل internship اللي كانت في 2011 or 2012 um, I I've already like done entrepreneurship. عملت مؤسسات، عملت agencies. كنت design for companies as a freelancer, will offering development either courses or development for companies and agencies and so on. And كل هذا في like even قبل high school. And so I started like very very early. And so by the time اللي I رحت على جوجل في الانترنشيب، في الفاينل ستاديز internship for my masters. الهدف هو كان kind of like see what the corporate world is about. Like see what Hitler, like I was تزاديت وكبرت وعشت في المغرب.
كان
most of my
هين
experience.
الانترنشيب بجوجل، لانه مثل ما بنعرف مش كمان موضوع هين، يعني خصوصي اذا انت
Yeah,
كنت education تعيتك بالمغرب
exactly.
وقت
Yeah,
ايزي.
exactly. So it wasn't easy. لا لا لا. So that's kind of like that was the main challenge. The main challenge was انت في المغرب ودراستك وكل شيء في system that's Moroccan. And so like nobody في Google knows شنو الجامعة اللي مشيت لها ولا like which schools are in Morocco. And so like you're comparing, like as a hiring manager, you're looking at different CVs and different experiences. Of واحد you have like Stanford MBA, MIT Media Lab researcher looking for an internship, and the flip side you have Zak El Fassi, مهندس دولة من المدرسة المحمدية للمهندسين. It's like so it's like it's almost like with this absurdity that I took the challenge. I was like, yeah, why not? And like I didn't know, up till then, like I ما كنت أعرف أي واحد من في جوجل ولا فيسبوك ولا like any of these tech companies, and they were like a very big mystery to me. It was like someone that and I couldn't, like I was a developer. I'm still kind of consider myself a developer. And so someone واحد اللي يبني على هذه platforms like Facebook or Google or any of these services that big tech companies own. I was always curious to see like what شو how to say it, like شو مسار behind the scenes. Like how can you get a peek behind the scenes and how these tech companies do work. And that was kind of I guess the main driving motivator to just like try to see if I can get to Google internship, because that at that point, like like if you're in college, and I mean that time like 2010 2009 yeah, maybe 2009 2009 kind of the main well, actually 2009 was masters. Like if I were to pick what's the highest bar when it comes to internships, I would say like a Google internship. And I was like, all right, just because that's a high bar, I kind of like I always have this weird contrarian way to see things. I try
بدك
to
تحقق انت الماكسيموم اللي بتقدر تعمله
لا
بالانترنت.
ماشي not even maximum. Like the maximum is like go to the moon. But it's almost like I try to see what are the hidden angles, you know. And so like one of the hidden angles here in this weird equation was that it's very unlikely for someone at Google to actually get like a CV from someone in my situation. How can I use that to my advantage? And so it's, instead of thinking, oh, Google gets like millions of CVs every year. At that point, I remember it was like, I think 2 million CVs every year. And like we're talking before LinkedIn and like the whole thing was even a thing. And so like there was this one company who gets like so many applications and so much interest from all over the world. And therefore the likelihood of actually someone being serious about getting in as an intern is, it's something that can be used to your advantage.
Okay.
Simply because you're almost like that, you can design the experience or the CV or what you're doing to look like 1 in a million. And if they get 2 million CVs.
الاكسبيرينس اللي حكيت عنها كمان اول ما بلشنا، يعني الاكسبيرينس اللي اخذتها على الشغل اللي انت عملته كله it was building your portfolio. so يمكن كنت فريش جراد بس انه كل البورتفوليو اللي انت عملته هو كان ليفرجي قديش انت you're different.
That's true. Yeah. So that's kind of that was the passion, just because I كنت بعمل like all of that on the side. I was doing consulting for fun, trying to design, code, build sites, build apps. And yeah, as you said, like that ended up being the portfolio that accidentally became, oh wow, okay, like this guy is actually 1 in a million here. Let's hire him for whatever. And yeah, so that's kind of like that was the whole idea behind the internship. It wasn't like I want to get like the best internship possible. It was more like I landed on
صراحة شو هي the best internship. يعني كمان it depends على الواحد بده يعمله. بس أنا بفهم لا شك إنه البيج نيمز مثل لما نحكي جوجل وميتا هن جانلي يعني كأنه far fetched companies for التالنت اللي بيكونوا عنا بالريجن يعني. بس خصوصي ما كان بوقتها في هيدا الدايفرسيتي والانكلوجن كمان اللي قد ذا تراينجل الشركات إنه يحطوها. طب أنت فتت على جوجل جات قررت at some point ترجع تفوت على ميتا. شو السبب اللي خلاك ترجع كمان تفوت على another big company noting إنه أنت جربت الستارت اب إذا بدك ايكوسيستم كمان وستارت اب وورد قبل؟
لاحظت إنه كان I still had developmental gaps when it comes to me as a person, as an entrepreneur. And decision was option A, hold like the next 10 years and work on yourself and get to where you want to get. Option B, find the environment or the ecosystem that can accelerate that can like just make it much faster. And Meta was that. Simply because في 2015 Facebook was the company that was kind of dictating how technology kind of works at the global scale, or at least the software part. It felt like developers will users first, but also developers like our region, Middle East and North Africa, and also like this rest of the world region wasn't represented. Like no one cared. Like if your app gets banned or gets deleted from a store or something, like even now, like who are you gonna talk to? And so I found a role that was basically be that guy that people would talk to for the MENA region. I was like, all right. And it was like that guy to talk to for the developer audience mostly. But it also ended up being like different, like multiple types of audiences, like governments and policy and media and so on, which end up afterwards becoming their own different teams. But
by
the
curiosity
main
كيف كنت تشتغل مع ال government in our region؟
like for instance there was some tech initiatives في الإمارات that are I don't remember, like 1 million Arab coders, I think, something like that.
بلا مزبوط.
Yeah, so like مثلا like part of my role initially was find those opportunities or co-create those opportunities with the ecosystem. So you find either a big agency that has a lot of funding, has a lot of resources, has a lot of access, or you find talented people that are willing to do things. And you basically, I'm like, I have carte blanche. I'm like, all right, like you figure out what's the optimal way to drive value, to add value there, and just do it. And so for 1 million Arab coders مثلا the value add was one, highlighting the region internally as like this is something that's happening there, therefore there is opportunity. And so kind of
هل
it
بتحس
helped.
that at that stage كان عن جد interested بالمينا region ولا
yeah and
أكثر
still
كconsumer ولا كان كمان بيشوف إنه عنا potential نكون part من the producers كمان للتكنولوجي بالريجن؟
both.
ولا أكتر from a consumer perspective؟ لأنه يعني تقريبا الشيء اللي شفناه بآخر فترة كان أكتر النظرة محل ما في مصاري بهيدا الريجن إنه let's try to sell them stuff، يعني أكتر نخليهم يشتروا، مش إنه عن جد عندهم يمكن المهارات أو اليد العاملة الكافية ليقدروا هن يشاركوا معنا بإنتاجية البرودكتس أو السيرفيسز.
So very سؤال قيم. I think the easiest way I think about it is, so you have في any big companies عندك two organisms. You have the people that spend money and the people that make money. The people that make money try to bring more money, and so those are usually sales. And the people that spend money are the ones that usually invest. And so my org, my team was that team that spends money. And so we had, like, it's not like we showed up and we had something to sell. It was more like, hey, how can we help either one take what's happening in the region and highlight it as a narrative inside the company. And so those are like tech events, those are initiatives, like government initiatives, those are whatever is happening. Let's leverage it to increase the narrative of the region as something that is relevant to our roadmap and relevant to the future of the company and all of that, regardless of the revenue aspect. And so kind of that was the main angle. And we never looked really at revenue. I don't care about revenue. And the second thing,
as a founder.
what's that? No,
you need to care about revenue. No,
that's a conversation or a question for later, maybe. And so you have highlighting the internal narrative of the region. The second one is find, as I said, the groups or the initiatives that can benefit from either funding or new programs or partnerships, or getting them involved in something. And like I mean, this is part of kind of some of the work that I'm the most proud of that I did, but also the work that I'm kind of the least inclined to talk about, as in like or name people individually. But part of the work was basically like highlighting local talent, either people, either groups, either companies, and figuring out how to involve them either with like executive leadership, like Zuckerberg, Sheryl Sandberg, and like the C-suite of the company at the time, that like either they had like personal interest in being involved in some of these initiatives or companies or whatever, and or introduce them to funding opportunities and investors that are willing to invest. And the funny thing in this kind of like this type of work is because you don't have and I realized احكي بانجليزي اكثر. نقلبها الدارجه نهضر بالمغربيه ولا
بجرب افهم اي فيك اذا بدك، وانا بجرب اشوف فيي افهم اذا علقت.
اوكي. and so bringing نجيب واحد الناس الهايلايت and like figuring out how to get them involved in the tech sphere as a whole شي حاجة اللي like we can't quantify or like we can't measure because it's not revenue that we made, but it's investments that take like years, 5-10 years to see. And yeah, those are ongoing, you know, like there's a lot of good stuff that's happening under the radar. What else?
طب
Yeah,
شو
and the
pros
third one is
والcons of
was that-
working بمتى؟ يعني انت من وجهة نظرك شو بتحس الادفانتج of working بشركة هالقد كبيرة، او يمكن disadvantages بوقتها، او يمكن هلا لانه مثل ما شايفين كمان في تغييرات جذرية بمتى، مثل ما انت قلت كانوا بالجولدن ايج طبعا، يمكن لما نحن عم نحكي اكثر من 5 سنين لورا. هلا شوي الامور عم تختلف، بس بغض النظر على هيدا الموضوع سبيسيفيكلي، شركات مثل فيسبوك بحجم فيسبوك، شو بتحس انت البروز والكونز يشتغل الواحد فيها؟
um I don't think كاين pros and cons. I mean كاين pros and cons for every role, every job. Of course pros is you get paid really well. And so if you know, like if you're top at what you do, technically you'd be inclined to go to one of these companies. You know, like if you want a 9 to 5 and you're a good coder or good designer or whatever, good PM, and you want to maximize your 9 to 5 payment, these companies pay the best. And so like the Kane had the aspect that's just like very pragmatic when it comes to what's the pro at working at
بس
this
is it
job.
really 9 to 5؟ يعني لأنه
No,
أنا
no, no, no,
I know
no,
many colleagues، يعني هي
no,
أكتر illusion خبرية من
no,
9 ل5، فعليا أكتر من هيك بكون.
no. You trade your life. You trade your life. It's not 9 to 5. It's more like 24/7. You're constantly wired to think about work. You're thinking about making dinner, but also you're thinking about work. You're thinking about what you're gonna say in your next meeting, but also you're thinking about what you just said in your previous meeting. And so your entire life just ends up being a sandwich of things that you have to do for your work, which has become your life. So I think that's kind of the con. To get to the con is, yes, you get paid well, but you trade your time and your life for that.
طب عندي سؤال، هل بتضطر تشتغل أكتر بكتير لأنه بيعطوا تاسكس أكتر من 1 FTE، ولا لأنه في كتير competition بشركات بهيدا الحجم كمان، واحد في more expectation منه أو بده يثبت حاله أكتر أو؟
No, it's I think في yes كاين شوية من هاد الأشياء but like 80% of it is due to the fact that عندك you're serving 3 billion people and you have 5 more to go. and it's, I mean, it sounds weird for like us normal humans when say these numbers, but like at that scale, like that's what your role is. Your role is figure out how to scale this business in across the world, figure out how to get users, figure out how to grow the pie. And you know, it's not something that you just like can wake up at 8, make your coffee, and at 9 you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna figure out what's the like how I'm gonna do my job today. Like no, like it's
عندي
something that
سؤال زعك، بالنسبة للكالتشر اللي أنت شفتها بمتى، وبتعرف كمان الشركات الكالتشر تبع الشركات اللي عنا بالمينا ريجن، شو بتحس بارت من الكالتشر يعني نجاح هيدا الشركات اللي هي بأمريكا؟ شو السبب تبعها؟ هل في شيء ريليتد؟ ما عم بحكي بس كسكيل سات كتكنيكال، بس هل في شيء بالكالتشر تبعنا بالطريقة اللي الشركات بتتعاطى، يمكن كوميونيكيشن، إذا بغيروها بتتوقع أن الشركات المحلية تلقى نجاح أكتر وأكبر؟
yes, absolutely. من وجهة نظري, I think the main thing when it comes to the culture the companies is the belonging. Like you when you join when you join these companies, you feel like you're part of something that's much bigger. And so like in my mind, it kind of like it's similar to joining the army. And it gives you that feeling of belonging, that feeling of having a family or second family, and that feeling of purpose, that feeling of mission. It gives you I guess, an illusion of legacy.
مم.
Um,
ليش illusion؟
well, at least you're convinced in the moment that your work is the most important thing in the world, which, that's why it's like a mix of illusion and delusion. Yeah. And in order to be good at your job, you have to really play the role really well. And I think this is where work-life balance becomes a conversation. Work becomes so permanent that it bleeds into personal life. But that's the secret of how these companies function. Once you bring someone and you make them feel like they are part of the organism, it becomes very hard to detach from the organism.
هلا بحس صارت اسهل مع كل شيء عم يعملوه lately. feeling detached صار يعني اسهل بكتير ال sense of stability و ownership و
Right.
belonging لما يصير في هيك mass layoffs اكيد رح تكون شوي
Oh
هيك.
yeah.
طب ليش قررت تترك زاك؟ انت فليت من يعني تقريبا من عم نحكي اكثر من شي سنتين تقريبا.
Centane actually in 5 days. Yeah.
من سنتين تقريبا. سو قبل ما تبلش كل قصص اللي اوفس والمشاكل اللي عم بتصير بمتى، ليه قررت وقتها تفل وترجع على تفتح زي جود لابس again؟
It was time.
كيف بتعرف؟ امتى you know that it's the right time؟
Yeah, it's complicated. It's so what I was talking about just من قبل هو work and life, and how much of your work is your life and how much of your life is your work. And so it gets to a point where I guess the dynamic becomes so that your work, you have to choose either your work or your life. And if you choose your work, you're going to have personal repercussions. You can't have a family. You can't really have, you can't have something you call home. Like your home needs to be your work.
بس كمان الانتربرنور بيقولوا خصوصي على التقليعة actually مش بس على التقليعة I think it's permanent once كمان انت يصير عندك شركة بتصير كمان هالقد demanding كوقت يعني مش انه على طول تقدر اللايف work life balance.
Yeah, I think the main difference هو it's kind of like rent versus buy. When you're an employee, you're just renting. And so like, yeah, you can lose the first few years of your kid or your whatever relationship, and yeah, work 24/7. I don't know. I think it's a compromise. It's a compromise, and if you choose work, life gets a hit. If you choose life, work gets a hit. You can't be a high performer at work and still have personal life, and I think that's why a lot of people got burned out.
You need to choose شو الدرب اللي بدنا نلاقيه. It's always خيارات ولا مرة بنكون عارفين 100% إذا على طول أخدين الخيار الصح ولا لا، بس إنه we have to take it at some point.
True.
طب زاك شو القصص lessons learned اللي أخذتها من your previous experience كفاوندر بزايجود وجبتها معك هلأ لما رجعت فتحت again؟
I think it's kind of like doing the same thing, but none of the same things. Well, first of all, the environment is different. Like I get to do this like in the heart of Silicon Valley, and kind of like compete with. It's kind of like be a small fish in a big pond, like. Versus before like my first experience was mainly في المغرب, was like a big fish in a small pond, a pond that didn't even exist.
بعده لهلا الوضع هيك برأيك بالمغرب؟
No, it's getting better. It's definitely improving. Shift like there's like so much stuff happening, and time. Well, one thing is like time does its thing. We're talking about like 2006 2005 like there was no such thing as tech companies, you know, like it's something she has really can't for like very foreign. Now everybody has a smartphone, has TikTok, so the likelihood of
I don't have
having
TikTok.
yeah I know but you have Instagram or and you have a podcast, uh, and so the likelihood of technology touching your life is high, which means the likelihood of you working in technology becomes high. Before it was like technology is something for nerds. You do tech if you don't have friends. um but yeah, it's just weird. It's like a different setup. So that's one different environment. The second thing is it's just like a different timeline. You know, it's like the AI is changing things, changing a lot of things.
زي جود كانت already
Funding.
بتشتغل ب AI ولا you made this tweak لما رجعت فتحتها هلا؟
What do you think what do you think the second and third letter of the company stand for?
ما بعرف you tell me.
AI. So like even the original name back in 2012, it was an AI company, and so like the first product. I mean, I never got to. I guess like it's just I never get to look back on these things. But the first product was a job search engine. And so the idea was you upload your CV and it just keeps sending you on a weekly basis jobs that match your profile the most. And so like at the core of it was an AI engine that ended up being repurposed for other things. But this time, it's kind of like the story is slightly different because I'm looking at AI from a slightly different angle. But yeah, like I think AI and computing. AI is just an evolution of how we do computing, and it's not something that needs to be kind of thought of as just new. I think it's just the evolution of how we interact with text boxes and computers.
Do you have partners now بزي جود
Yeah.
بعد ما فتحتها؟ So هي هيدا السؤال اللي على طول بيطرح نفسه. يعني أنا when I started Libro كمان years ago, I think one of the lessons learned لإلي إنه I tried to start it by myself, which doesn't really work بلا ما يكون واحد عنده partners قوية. So كيف أنت نقيت البارتنرز تاعولك؟ يعني كيف خلقت هيدا التيم اللي بتعرف إنه سوا رح تقدروا تنجحوا بزي جود لابس؟
So without kind of like too much details, unnecessary details. My first entrepreneurial adventure كنت just solo, and it's almost like I wanted to prove a point, but also I wanted to do it as a way to accelerate learning. I remember like kind of the main reason I decided to join Facebook was to accelerate growth and learning, and that's exactly the same reason why, like after the Google internship, I was like, you know what, it's actually better to just go back to Morocco and do my own thing, because now I have like a couple months exposure in this big environment. I know what it looks like. Therefore, I am more equipped, or at least I have slightly more confidence to do it on my own. And so yeah, like 4 years was kind of like exponential learning, mostly on the technical side, I guess. Excuse me. And I did it by myself, and I didn't want to have partners simply because I don't think you can learn. I could have learned as much as I did if I had others involved, because the type of decisions that you make when you have people versus when you're solo, it's very, very different. Very different. It's kind of like when you're single versus when you have a family of 4.
أكيد. من شوي قلت لي إنه مش كتير يهمك الريفينيو، بس هلا أنت صرت CEO. كيف عم تقدر تعمل هيدي البالانس بين عن جد running your company وما يكون عندك الريفينيو كمان as a main priority بالأول؟
I think it comes down to like how patient you are, because yeah, like revenue and making money is something that's never gonna wait, or at least in our mind. Like if you have to choose between making I don't know, like $1 million right now versus maybe $10 million next week, you choose the thing that's more, like more certain. So you get to pick $1 million right now. And so I think that's kind of, it's the same way. Making revenue, or at least prioritizing revenue right now, means maybe not looking at the thing for what it could have been and limiting the growth prospects. Like an example, if Facebook was to be, or started as a revenue oriented company, or wanted to be revenue focused, it would have probably changed the model to subscription and end up becoming a dating app.
Yes.
And so like revenue adds extra constraints that I don't think in my weird innovation brain, I guess, works well. Of course, there is the you have to think about where the revenue is going to come from eventually at some point. But it's not something that needs to be a factor in early decision making.
طيب كيف ريليشن عم بتكون مع الانفستر، خصوصي بعد ما شفنا شو اللي عم بيصير بأمريكا هلا؟ هل هيدا عم بتصعب على الشركات كمان يقدروا إذا كان early stage أو حتى كسكيل أبس يقدروا هن يطلعوا بالطريقة اللي بدهم إياها؟ وهل بتحس إنه الانفسترز appetite خصوصي مع البوم تبع ال AI مركزة specifically على ال AI currently؟
It depends. I generally, and I'm not of the hypothesis that raising funding is a good thing always. So there is
يمكن in a very early stage لأنه
no, not necessarily the stage, but I think funding needs to depend on one question only. Are you willing to work for those people? And actually two questions. Are you willing to work for those people? And are you willing to make them at least $1 billion each? Because I think that like when it comes to working with investors, we tend to see them as suits, like people with suits and nice people and dressed up well and shaven and all of that. But they're after making money. They're after making a lot of money. And so that's the one thing that matters. Not your product, not your design. The one thing that matters is, can you make them
money
100x the initial investment? Obviously, this is kind of like not 100% of investors, but I'm just overgeneralizing here, because that's kind of the mindset that I'll go with if and when I'm raising funding. Like, can I make you $1 billion? As in, is there enough opportunity here that it justifies getting any funding? And is this the thing that's gonna make it? Because for a lot of products and a lot of companies and a lot of people, raising funding is not the right thing. Like, if you want to become Uber, yes. If you want to become Airbnb, yes. If you want to build a $50 million annual revenue generating business forever, and maybe even buy an island next to Greece, no. That's it. It's like two things that are very different, because once you accept that external investor money, you start playing in the investor game. الانفستور game is what you mentioned. هو exactly شنو وقع في US recently, which is like you have so much pressure put on the system to generate future growth potential and future value, but there is no market that's going to buy that future value. There is no future because there is no future. And so because the pressure to grow, because of the money injected, like if you put $5 million in a startup that just started, you should be almost certain before putting that $5 million that whatever they make is going to be worth at least $500 million. For you to make anything as an investor, but also for investors, it's not their money; it's the limited partners' money. So like they have people behind, which is usually pension funds or family offices, or basically like the richest people in the world.
Yes. I would assume الانفستمنت بأمريكا بعد أصعب من عنا in the region يعني. There's a lot of options و choices بأمريكا في أكتر ستارت ابس عنا limited يمكن ecosystem بيكون أصغر access. عم بحكي على local investors. كيف بتقارن أنت بين الأكسس وإنفستمنت للستارت ابس بين يو اس مثلا وموروكو؟
Honestly, I think that's a meme. That's a meme that Silicon Valley created. For a simple reason, Silicon Valley wants the brand so that investors here get first dibs. If you're launching or about to launch $1 billion company from Lebanon, it's not in their interest for you to think that there is an opportunity for Lebanon or for Maghreb. It's in their interest for you to think that YC is better. And it's not something that people think about. I mean, well, I guess I did. Anyways, and so the whole ecosystem is designed to promote the image of, hey, Silicon Valley investors, they write easy checks and they have big pockets and it's easy to get money. And I think, honestly, I think it's much easier to do it elsewhere. It's much easier to get grants. It's much easier to get bank loans for SMBs, especially if you have any revenue. It's much easier to get friends and family investment. If you're small, it's much easier. It's just much easier to get investment overall outside of the US or, well, I guess like specifically the Silicon Valley kind of investor arena. And
امتى ذاك معقول يقول انا بدي ارجع على المغرب، بدي اترك هلا انا بسيليكون فالي؟ هل معقول تقول يوما ما انه انا بدي ارجع على المغرب؟ وامتين ساعتها بتقول هيدا الشيء؟
it's gonna sound funny. I enjoy the time zone difference for some reason. The time zone difference means the type of people that I get to interact with and type of news that I get to consume are almost like synchronized with Silicon Valley. So I kind of like get to live what people think here and when they are thinking that, which I think is important if, like under certain circumstances. The time zone difference also kind of makes it so that I can only overlap with certain regions in specific times. And so I guess that makes it so that I have more quality time with people overall. But kind of to your question, رجع المغرب, I think the ideal is not to think about geography as something that's important, because you can serve any geography from anywhere in the world differently, and sometimes certain geographies are better served from elsewhere. It's unfortunate, but I think having representation is very important. And it's not just representation like let's have more people work, or more Arabs or more Moroccans or more Lebanese working in these tech companies. I think representation goes beyond work in tech companies and inside ecosystems. Like, can we have those people, it's not just people, but those ecosystems that people can rely on.
هل بتحس في ستيريوتايبس عن الارابس، ويكون يمكن واحد السكسس ستوري اللي جايين من الدول العربيه اللي موجودين بهالايكو سيستم اذا كان بامريكا واوروبا بيساعدوا انه يتغير هيدا الستيريوتايبس الموجوده عن العرب بشكل عام؟
I don't think there are stereotypes. At least I don't see them. I think the stereotype is whether you shipped something that's used by 1 billion people or not. Like it goes back to like that whole Silicon Valley thing. People would care if communities and countries create global change. People care about TikTok because it was created in China and it's not a Silicon Valley creation. People don't care about Morocco because we haven't created anything else that people would care about.
كيف بتشوف
and so kind of
التعاون بين الايكو سيستم بموروكو وباقي الايكو سيستم بالدول العربية؟ هل في تعاون enough وكيف بتشوف
No.
ممكن يكون التعاون اقوى، خصوصا من خلال انت خبرتك من ذا ريجن لما اشتغلت مع ميتا؟ شو بتحس المين جاب ليكونوا هالايكو سيستم ما في يمكن اللي يكون في ايديل تعاون اكثر ايديل بيناتهم؟
I don't think في تعاون. I don't know if it's because of language barrier. Like although we, like we share نفس الجذر العربي في اللغة, the nuance and the dialect is so vastly different that إلا هدرت معك بالدارجة ما غتفهميش شنو نقول. Which means if I exactly yeah, which means if I speak in Darija, you're not going to understand what I say. And so kind of this is, I think it's a foundational problem to why the MENA region is not doesn't collaborate, is because we have so many variations of the same Arabic. Mm-hmm. So we kind of like feel like we belong, but at the same time we don't, because you can't, once you meet, you can't communicate in your Arabic or your version of Arabic, and so kind of you have to fall back on either French or English.
بس هل في دور للايكو سيستم ستيك هولدرز، يمكن للحكومات انه يقدروا هن يعملوا اكثر هيدا النوع من الترابط؟ يعني مثلا نشوفها هيدا بالاتحاد الاوروبي مرات كثير بيصير في تعاون بين حتى لما حدا بيحكي يمكن الماني حدا بيحكي فرنسي، بس بنشوف في تعاون بين الاتحاد الاوروبي وهيدي لغه كليا مختلفه. فيعني افتكر كمان يمكن في افورت زياده يمكن ينحط، بس الواحد يكون عنده وجهة معينة. يعني أنا بحس ما في وجهة إنه إذا نحن تعاوننا مع بعض لوين بدنا نوصل أو شو الهدف اللي بدنا نوصل له. فأتليست من رؤيتي هلأ بشوف كل بلد بجرب لحاله، بس يمكن إذا بنقدر نلاقي سبل لنتعاون يمكن نقدر أشياء نحققها أسرع.
Yeah, I think كاين وسائل للتعاون ما بين البلدان العربية. مثلا واحد من right now you have الذكاء الاصطناعي all large language models, and there is a huge opportunity للتعاون ما بين الدول العربية هو create a large language model that's native Arabic. Very easy. It's, well, not easy. Very focused, defined, well-defined problem. Requires massive collaboration. Requires, like Arab scale collaboration to crack, because you have like so many dialects and so much language work that needs to be done. And it's not something that I can say, oh yeah, Sarah, let's go and raise some funding for this idea. Yeah, something that needs to something like شي حاجة اللي خاصة تكون top down, and you have funding, you have like governments involved at the highest levels and structure, and you can bring those nations together. And I think especially like in times of need, الفرص تعاون they increase. And I think we have one right now, which is create LLM Arabic. Fun fact: there is an LLM that was launched by TII, which is Telecommunication. What does it stand for? Technology Innovation Institute, Abu Dhabi, and it doesn't speak Arabic. That's it's you'd expect it to speak Arabic, but it doesn't. If you go to the Hugging Face model page, it speaks 4 languages. English, German, I think French and Spanish maybe. And so that المشكل ماشي هو الانفستمنت. So the investment موجود حيث الامارات they've invested and they released واحد من اكبر large language models. It's called Falcon 40 billion, and it's trained on 40 billion parameters, which is like it compares to ChatGPT and GPT-4 in benchmarks. And it still doesn't speak Arabic. So one thing that can bridge or can be a Kickstarter project to these nations to collaborate would be something like build an Arabic corpora on the internet and seed it to these large language models and train them on it. But yeah, again, like it's kind of like the question is, where do you start? And this is kind of where I am like, well, if I was still in big tech, it's something that you could, it's something that you can start from there. And that's the type of impact that those big companies can have, which is like, if you have the right idea, you can align the stakeholders at different levels of government and society and business and do fun projects together. But yeah, it's not something that you can just easily do on the outside without as much resources.
زاك، شو هو آخر مسج بتحب توجهه للشباب والصبايا in the MENA region؟ هل بتشجعهم ما بعرف يروحوا على entrepreneurship أو يشتغلوا companies، يبقوا يسافروا، يعني on all levels؟ لأنه again حكينا قديش الخيارات بتحدد مسارنا بالحياة.
Yeah.
So what's heck your message and advice تحب تقول لهم إياها؟
I hope the message and the advice is not join big tech companies or leave your countries, because I think the message is probably the opposite. Again,
بس it's authentic يعني
yeah.
فكرة انه يعني يمكن هي نحن logically بنقول انه لا ما بدنا نروح، يعني انا لحديت ما جيت على فرنسا كنت اقول لا ما بدنا نروح وبدنا نجي، بس مرات الظروف تكون اقوى منه للواحد يعني.
I'll get to why. The reason is simple. Well, there are two reasons. Both of them are simple. One is there is a new tool, and two, there is where the growth potentials are. The new tool is AI, and it's almost like في 2007 من Steve Jobs, like he walked on the Apple stage and it was like, iPhone, it can browse, it can do this, it can do that. Although he's kind of like originally Syrian, nobody cared about that product being accessible in our markets. And because of that, the App Store itself was not accessible in, well, at least in my market. I don't know about you. But like getting an iPhone was not something that you could do in Morocco probably until like 2013. And so like you have an entire generation of could-be developers that missed the boat on that. That's why we didn't have Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp and stuff built in the region. Not because we don't have talent or because we don't have creativity, is because we don't have grit or drive. No, that's just because we didn't have access to the device. As simple and as stupid as that sounds. Same thing for the computer, same thing for the internet. And so like we're always the MENA region has always been lagging behind at least one generation or two generations of computing technology.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time, I think we have an equalizer. AI is an equalizer because it arrives at a time where everyone who needs to be connected is connected. Pretty much. There's still a lot of people that probably need to be connected that are still not connected, but they are not missing out on a lot, honestly. they're better off not being connected. And so you have the connectivity wave, which means like pretty much like everyone is connected. And then you have the fact that this is a technology that practically gives access to any person, developer or creator or creative or someone that wants to do something, access to probably what would have needed 1,000 brains just 12 months ago. And yeah, does this come with risk? Is it good? Is it bad? I'm like, yeah, like there are all sorts of questions, but like the fact of the matter is there is technology, there is a wave, and the whole MENA region has access to that technology. What's the MENA region going to do? And if you miss the boat now, it's probably gone for another cycle. And the next cycle probably going to be in like 2,000 years. And I think this is why this is a crucial moment for people to kind of The second kind of aspect of my answer is look at where the growth prospects are. Because like if you look at Europe or US, it's getting weird. It's things are stagnating. Inflation is getting. I mean, yeah, this is it's global, but it's global because it started in the US and Europe. It's not something that was homegrown in whatever Morocco or Lebanon. But it's so.
Lebanon غير case completely.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Well, Morocco at least. And so it's because it's something that trickles from global markets. You end up with kind of like different degrees of impact, and kind of the leading nations or the traditionally leading nations have had their growth prospects stalling because they can't. Purchasing power is tanking. Inflation is soaring. Like savings accounts are probably on an all-time low, or maybe 50-year low or something in the US. It's like you don't have that much brightness in the future. And so figuring out what are the pockets of the world where there's brightness, and there are actually many. And the MENA region is one. Like there's like so much cool stuff happening all over, digital and offline. And figuring out how can this whole thing just get better. It's like one step closer to where it needs to be, using the technology that's available today, and knowing that the savior honestly is ourselves. It's not going to be it's the US or Europe that's going to help solve this problem. I think it's for the first time that is the same tools are equally distributed globally, and builders and creators at the global scale have the same access to the same tooling. And the next 10 years is we're probably going to look at the world with redrawn maps.
شو رح يصير مع البوم of AI in the next 10 years in the world?
I said redrawn maps, but I didn't mean the physical maps. It's mostly the wealth distribution maps. Communities where language is let's say uploaded to the internet, which is English. If you're an English-speaking person, you have way higher chances at creating value in at least the near future. Yeah. And so I feel like there is this kind of, we went from a normal distribution, which is like you have 80% of people in the middle that are creating value or creating content or whatever, to probably going to be on the edges of that distribution. You're going to end up with people that are on the extreme of tradition and like doing things analog, handmade, artisan things, or the people that are extremely advanced and like literally like building your AI model to do your job that is specific to you. Doesn't look like Sarah's AI model. And so those are the people that are going to be extremely empowered.
Yeah.
The closer we can get to move the most people closer to leveraging AI, closer to understanding the value of things that are in the physical world, I think the better things will be.
100%. Thank you, Zak, على كل شيء. Valuable insights, valuable conversation. بسطت فيها كتير.
Thank you for the invite, Sarah. This was great.